It's 11:59 at Gun Owners Radio, and this is the Penn Patriot, music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, and another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind American lines, this is your song.
So there's something we got to talk about here in California next week. It's actually the first Tuesday in November. There's an election. There's a special election. I'm sure most of you have heard of it, but I got to tell you, you got to get involved. You got to go do something. The very least you have to do is vote. It's on Prop 50. Now, Prop 50 is, it's so ridiculous what they're trying to do. And it'll have such a negative impact for gun owners that we have to talk about it. I know it isn't directly affecting, it's not a gun ban or, a gun tax or something like that. But what it is they're redrawing the congressional districts in California, and they being the Democratic Party is really what it boils down to. And they're saying, hey, you know what? If we redraw these districts, we can pick up an additional 5 Congress members. Okay, so basically 5 members of Congress who were Republican, they're redrawing their districts so that they are outnumbered and will pretty easily elect a Democrat. Now, we're nonpartisan. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, decline to stay, Libertarian, Green, don't care. But the reality is, if you look at these maps, the Congress members that we will lose are absolutely pro-Second Amendment. And I'm going to bet that the Congress people we're going to pick up are anti-Second Amendment. In fact, at least 2 of the people who are running in a district that will be redrawn right here in San Diego are definitely not friends when it comes to your Second Amendment rights. So we have to say something. We have to do something. So what I need you to do at the very least is go vote. If you don't have your ballot, fine. Go to the county registrar of voters office and walk in and vote. It'll take you all of about 10 or maybe 15 minutes. It is such an easy thing to do. Go vote. Right now, Prop 50 is leading. If you look at a lot of the polling, it's looking like that it's going to pass. Mm-hmm. And that is going to be really bad news if this thing passes. So, go vote, number one. Find somebody in your life who hasn't voted and get them to vote against Prop 50. And if you've done both of those, then get out there into your neighborhoods, find an organization like, who's doing a lot is Reform California, Carl DeMaio's group. Go join them, stuff some envelopes, walk a district, whatever, share it on your Facebook. Although I got to tell you, sharing stuff on social media is it's not really activism. It's kind of the very minimal effort. So what I need you to do is vote, find somebody else to vote, and then go help an organization that's finding even more people to vote against Prop 50. Did you guys vote yet?
I have not yet voted. I like voting in person, like a weirdo.
Like a weirdo? So what, are you going to go down to the board, the Register of Voters?
Yeah.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's easy, right? You walk in, walk out. It's not a big line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but last time I went, they didn't even ask for an ID or anything.
Or maybe
they never do.
They never do.
Okay.
They never have.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. No, nobody even asked me my name or where I live. I just walked in and.
It's almost like you're showing them something inappropriate if you try to show them your license.
That's so funny. Yeah. I was surprised. I think maybe because I've only ever voted in California, I assumed everywhere else you have, you show ID, but maybe not. I don't know. But it seemed strange to me. I was like, "Oh, you don't need me to tell you that I live here or anything?" Okay.
So that's even more reason to vote, people.
Right.
Like if you don't think the other side's figure that out, they figure that out.
Yeah.
In all sincerity, they run a pretty that's state law, but the Register of Voters in San Diego, they actually do a very, very good job. But regardless, whatever you think about the voting process or system or how secure it is or isn't, go down there and make sure that your vote is counted. You also, if you go early, like today or tomorrow and vote, you can actually track your ballot.
Right.
And it'll show you like, yep, we got your ballot and it was counted. So if you go like now and do that and you don't see that your ballot was counted before that first Tuesday in November, then you can go back down and say, hey, something's gone wrong. I want to make sure that my vote is counted. So that's another reason to go early. But yeah, vote no on Prop 50. Get other people to vote no on Prop 50. Help organizations that are trying to get folks to vote no on Prop 50. So there you go. Gun owners, beware. So there were some fireworks in the courtroom not too long ago here, just about a week ago with attorney extraordinaire John Dillon, Second Amendment attorney, fantastic guy. This was knife rights versus Bonta, which was just as much a Second Amendment case as the other gun cases that he and others have been a part of. And I wanted to have John on to talk about exactly what happened and where we are with that case. So without further ado, John Dillon, how are you, man?
Good. How are you, man?
Good. Thank you for being on the show. So tell us, just lay the groundwork for the case. Knife rights versus Bonta. What's going on with that case?
Okay, yeah. So this is a case that challenged California's ban on switchblade knives. So any knife that opens automatically that has a blade length of 2 inches or over is prohibited under California law. You can't buy them, sell them, transfer them, possess them, carry them, anything like that. The law was passed in, I want to say originally listed shortly after the American PPA Federal Switchblade Act. I never since we were banned in California. With the Bruin decision coming out of 2022, we decided it'd be a good time to challenge the law when it comes to switchblade because, the Second Amendment talks about arms. It doesn't talk about guns, the firearms, or hand-down to rifles. So anything that you can use as a weapon of offensive defense, according to the Supreme Court, is an arm. So
What interested you specifically about this case when this case was presented to you, or when it came up? What made you go, oh yeah, this is something I want to sink my teeth into?
Yeah, I think the main thing was the stupidity of the law. So, a switchblade, it's a pocket knife. And, I've been Boy Scouts, I go outdoors, hunting, hiking, all that. I've had pocket knives since I was, I think I got the first pocket knife when I was 4 years old. And I still have it today. Not, just like I own guns and other arms and stuff, I own knives. And when I looked at the law and reviewed everything and saw that, look, they're banning against simple pocket knife that's common everywhere in the country, trying to make some weird claim that they're somehow more dangerous than other pocket knives because of the way they open. And it's a completely absurd notion. And I thought that challenging it on this level would be good because, if we do the firearms cases, judges, juries, DAs, prosecutors, everyone's hackle raised up as we bring up guns in the courtroom. And you obviously have a big bias going in the courtroom in California against any type of gun challenge. And it was interesting to me that knife cases, they didn't seem to raise these hackles up that much. As a gun case, like you're arguing the same law, you're arguing the same precedent and the same constitutional analysis. I thought that there'd be a nice way to challenge these laws, get some better precedent with regard to like how the courts analyze these cases. Here we go from there.
And what's the law? It can't be any folding knife cannot be more than 2 inches. Is that the law?
So it's switchblade knife. So it's for simple
only
terms,
switchblade.
Yeah, switchblades. What California, their definition of switchblade would encompass what you typically think of as a switchblade, where you press a button, the blade comes out either out the side of the knife, out the front. But it also would include butterfly knives, which that the teeter case was about out of Hawaii, and then it also includes gravity knives. They're the broad definition of what a switchblade is.
Okay, but folding knives can be more than 2 inches, right?
Yeah, so you can have a manually folding knife.
Or spring assist.
So you have a knife like this. Oh, let's pull it back on the camera. And I manually open it. This is a pocket knife. You can have that. That's fine. No restriction on unrestricted carry. You can also have these knives again. Simple pocket knife. This is what's called an assisted opening knife. So it has a spring that is opening the knife, but you have to press on the blade in order to get it to open. Now, switchblade knives, that's where you just press the button and it opens up. So you don't have to touch the actual blade to get it to open. Those are what's prohibited under Gatto.
I feel so much safer that those.
Yeah. Exactly. When you look at it and you see it in person, you just shake your head and go, wait, why? What's the difference? Because fundamentally, any folding knife can only cut or do any damage if it's open and like the blades exposed. The way it opens really doesn't matter. If it opens manually or automatically, you can only use the knife once. So it just makes no sense when you start hearing arguing.
So I feel like this is a law that like came out like 6 months after West Side Story or something stupid like that. I mean, how does
What happened is in 1968 they passed the Federal Switchblade Act, which banned interstate commerce for switchblade. And I have a separate challenge out of Texas challenging that. Right now they're at the Fifth Circuit they revealed. But and all of that started from a Women's Health magazine article that was written by someone that had no credentials at any time, literally writing this giant piece stating how all the youths of the United States are killing each other, stabbing each other with these immensely dangerous switchblade knives. It was all made up, no factual basis whatsoever to support any claims, but that led to the Federal Switchblade Act, which Congress of course passed. And then a bunch of states right after that, including California, also started implementing switchblade laws. And it's all due to the West Side Story movie and its article, this single article that was written that started the trade.
Wasn't part of the reasoning on this one that it's unusual to use a switchblade? Like that's part of so if it's unusual to use a switchblade, why do we need to ban them?
Yeah, so here's the argument breakdown, because the switchblade knife, as we talked about, it's just a pocket. There's no actual real difference between the alien knife. So the state couldn't do what they've done in small weapon cases, or what they call assault weapon cases, or firearms cases, where they try to control it and prove to the court, like, look, these guns are so much more dangerous. They're used these last shooting. They're way more lethal than these other guns, which is all BS. It has nothing to do with constitutional analysis, and the courts should just reject it entirely. But that's what they do, and the courts like to rely on that in making a decision, at least so far. But they couldn't do that when it comes to switchblade. They can't say a switchblade knife is more lethal than another knife. It's just a knife. So in this case, under the new Bruin standard, it's the threshold question. Does the Second Amendment protect the conduct in question? The plain text of the Second Amendment, and quite clearly protects the right to keep and bear arms. Switchblade is an arm in every sense of the word, and keeping and using it and carrying it all falls under them. So right then and there, the constitutional analysis should put the burden on the state and then judge up liability. They can't do that. So what the state did is, instead of arguing with the text, which is a threshold question, they started adding all these extra conditions and qualifications on what you need to satisfy in order to be considered an arm. under the plain text. So Heller already said an arm is any weapon of offense or defense that you can use to hurt another or defend you. And so for example, that's it. Questions answered. But the states, and no, even though switchblades are knives and they are arms under the broad definition of arm, in order to be a protected arm under the text, they said plaintiffs had to show that these specific knives were commonly used in self-defense area. So not that people carry them for self-defense. They were trying to argue that we had to show a certain number of people actually use switchblade knives in self-defense in order for it to be considered. So they added on a stuff on.
So they're the ones that made it uncommon by banning it, and now they're saying, well, people don't really use this that way. Yeah, you banned it. That's why it's uncommon.
Yeah, well, and we provided this all sorts of evidence, even though it wasn't even our burden in the case, to show that they're common in America. There are millions and millions of these throughout the country. Back in 1950s, just 2 manufacturers alone were producing 1.2 million switchblades a year in the United States. There's probably 3 manufacturers or small manufacturers switchblades. So we're making way more in this country than we ever have. So they're common numerically. To show that they were common jurisdiction, at least 45 states allow switchblades to be presented. You can easily own them. And then we also show just categorically a block it. So if you think about anyone who does not have some sort of block operation there, it's probably one of the most widely open farms in the country. So in that sense, just in companies everywhere, because they're just that pocket knife and it shouldn't be banned. And we showed all that the state had no evidence to the contrary. They literally provided no evidence in the case that would contradict anything they provide. They just said, no, that doesn't count. You got to show that they're used in self-defense art. And when we had an oral argument last week, it was actually interesting. One of the judges on the panel going after the state pretty fairly by saying, well, where in the text does it say that you have to use them in self-defense in order for them to be considered arms or for them to be considered protected? And the state did not have a good answer.
I mean, technically, anytime you have it, whether you're holding it or it's in your pocket, you're using it for self-defense. You know what I mean? You don't actually have to stab somebody for you to...
It feels like they're trying to incentivize us actually needing to protect ourselves. Hopefully we never have to stab somebody.
I know.
Hopefully we never have to shoot somebody.
The judges are going, look, unless you start stabbing people, we're going to ban it.
Well, then look at this, too. That argument that they say, you got to use it self-defense. If the court were to adopt an argument like that, you're telling me now that this was the argument. Unless you show that they're used in self-defense commonly, all the time, it's not a protected arm under the Second Amendment. So I got a bolt-action rifle behind me. They're not commonly used in self-defense. The lever-action rifle, not commonly used in self-defense. Single-action revolver behind me, not commonly used in self-defense. There's all sorts of firearms. Now, if they adopted this type of analysis, that would magically not be protected arms, which is patently absurd. No one actually would believe that. I mean, even the craziest gun control nuts have already said, well, we're not trying to ban your hunting rifle. They're perfectly protected. Those are fine. That argument would literally get rid of protection of the Murph gun. It's an absurd argument.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to have a gun owners radio event, and we're going to get as many people as we can to show up, and we'll document. We'll just all poke each other with a knife, and we'll document it, and that's going to help your case, John. I think
There you go.
Yeah.
It's
We're doing 1 3/4.
self-defense, so you have no idea any stab to your post.
I see the headline now. Gun nuts using knives.
So what happened with the what's going on with the case? I saw some of the arguments. I saw some of the exchanges, and it looked like you got a bad pull when it comes to the judges that were assigned to your case. I think he was in front of 3 judges, and those 3 judges, you didn't look like you had. Let's just say Benitez wasn't on that panel.
So the poll I got wasn't the best. I think it was a Biden appointee and 2 Clinton appointees, which I would love to say that doesn't matter and that judges are completely objective. Where they vote or who them does not indicate where they will fall on certain issues as law. Yeah, like I said, I'd love to say that, but I don't think I honestly can.
I used to like to pretend that it didn't matter, and I think there was a time when I wasn't pretending. I really had this, this kind of this pure, gee golly gosh attitude of, no, it doesn't matter. They're there to do it. But in all honesty, they've made it matter. The judges have been the ones that have made it matter. They're the ones that are, making completely ludicrous arguments, the ones that were appointed by Clinton and Obama and Biden. They're the ones that they've made it matter. They've convinced me that it matters who appointed you. It's not perfect. I've seen some folks appointed by pro Second Amendment presidents who still screw things up, but it's definitely an indicator.
Yeah. So I knew it wasn't going to be the friendlies count going in and but I do say I did do a fair take. They asked hard the other side as well, and at least in my opinion, I do not believe the state had good answers at all. I mean, at one point, the state couldn't even make up their mind about whether they in possession in the homeland. They took the position initially that possession in the home wasn't banned, but then they said it was. And then the court was like, well, what we're talking about, you said this, wearing the law doesn't say that. And then they flip-flopped again. To be honest, at this point, I don't know what the state's position is of whether they think it's banned in the home or not. Wow. I would say, yes, the law says it is banned in the home. So it wasn't great on their end. But yeah, we knew we were going to have an uphill battle. It's not an uncommon situation for the Ninth Circuit. But I believe while they had hard questions, they also had hard questions on their side. Or I believe we see good answers on our own.
Okay. What's the next step? Where are we at with the case?
Wait. I know that's the answer that no one likes to hear, but now we wait for panel. And depending on that, the unit will kind of dictate where we go. I mean, generally, from memory here, I don't think I've seen any Second Amendment thing that had a request for consideration for an en banc panel after a Ninth Circuit panel decision came out that was denied. So generally, unfortunately, when you have a Second Amendment case, after a panel decision, or whether or not it is in your favor, the next step usually involves full panel of judges.
All right. Yeah. Awesome job. Way to fight the fight. Am I going to see you at San Diego County Gun Owners' 10th birthday party on November 6th? Are you going to be able to make it? You've been with San Diego County Gun Owners from the beginning, so I'm hoping you can come and have a piece of cake with us.
Yeah, I'd love to. What's the date?
November 6th. Go to sdcgo.org and the flyer's there, but it's November 6th. It's at
I think my clan be there.
Good. So there's another reason for you to come to our celebration. You can meet the handsome John Dillon. And by the way, we confirmed before this interview that is not a virtual background. That's his actual that's his actual office.
It's the coolest.
When I appear, great reaction.
That's awesome. John, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
All right, have a good one, guys. Okay.
All right, bud.
Thank
See ya.
you.
So let's talk about 1791 Group. If your business is in the firearms industry, you've probably felt it. Marketing's expensive, social media is hostile, and it's far too easy to get lost in the noise.
The 1791 group fixes that. They help you to cut through the clutter by clarifying your message so customers instantly understand why they should buy from you. Then they build the systems, your website, CRM, ads, and content that actually turn interest into sales. And because they understand the community, they can even get your brand in front of our gun owners' radio audience, which includes over 100,000 engaged gun owners every month.
Don't waste another dollar on marketing that doesn't work. Go to 1791group.com, that's 1791group.com, and tell them Michael from Gun Owners Radio sent you. Start growing with a team that's on your side.
All right, this is our deployment section. We are going to talk to you about how to get involved here locally in San Diego. Go to www.sdcgo.org/volunteer to learn about our tabletops that you can come and volunteer at. We will give you everything that you need to be successful as a volunteer at that event. And we also have shooting socials. Shooting socials are a fantastic way for you to get to know a new shooter and help them through their first ever shooting experience. You don't need to be an instructor. You don't need to know very much about firearms. We just want you there to help and assist and be a friendly face for these folks who are doing their first ever shooting experience. We also want to invite you to come to our 10th birthday party. SDCGO is turning 10 and it is party time. If you are not a member, please join SDCGO. They are doing such amazing work in the Second Amendment community here locally in San Diego and in California. There has been a huge impact SDCGO has had on the Second Amendment fight, not just with lawsuits, but on the local grassroots level as well. The organization has had some amazing achievements over the last 10 years, and San Diego needs San Diego County gun owners. We need members. We know that it's important for San Diego. We want to remind you guys all of the great things that we have done. We have fought against GVROs. We have fought against unconstitutional laws, and the future is bright. SDCGO is going to do amazing things in the next 10 years, and we need your membership to help us do that. Let us know what you would like to see SDCGO doing in the future down below in the comments.
This is brought to you by Cargo, cases and rugged gear outfitters in El Cajon. Go to cargostores.com, buy something today, or visit them at 423 Broadway in El Cajon. There are two enemies of your firearms, rust and the government. The good news is Cargo has your back on both fronts. As a proud sponsor, they're helping us fight to get more pro-Second Amendment officials into office, and their rugged cases help you keep your firearms secure and protected. Built like a tank, Cargo cases are stackable, weatherproof, and ready for anything. Whether you're hitting the range or going off the grid, you need a Cargo case. Whether for your gun or other equipment, you need a Cargo case. And here's something that's just for our listeners. If you buy a Cargo case in the store at Cargo Rugged Gear Outfitters in El Cajon, just mention Gun Owners Radio, and you're going to get a free desiccant pack. And that's going to help keep your gear bone dry, battle ready, and rust free. Visit them at 423 Broadway in El Cajon. Great products, great prices, and uncommonly good service. Cases and rugged gear outfitters. Cargo. Check them out. Okay, our next guest used to be in the assembly. His name is Mike Gatto. He is an attorney, and he's also, he wants to talk about the fact that he was a Democrat in the assembly, and is very pro-Second Amendment. And I think that there is definitely a stereotype and maybe an earned stereotype that Democrats are not pro-Second Amendment. But it's not always true. Just like not every Republican is pro-Second Amendment, not every Democrat is anti-Second Amendment. So I wanted him to come on and talk about it, have a really good conversation, and see if we can, if he can give us some arrows for the quiver. So Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here.
Good. So let's start. So first off, you're an attorney, right?
Yeah, I am the two most popular professions, right? I'm a politician and an attorney. So everybody hates me. I mean, it is like I suppose if I threw in used car salesman, I would have the trifecta. But
Yeah,
it's
really.
bad.
Yeah, no kidding. So what, when you got out of law school, what made you want to go into politics?
Well, when I got out of law school, I was actually practicing law, helping private sector companies that had challenges with the government. And that's where you say, gosh, doesn't everybody? Right.
Yeah, really.
But I did that for a number of years. And then there was a vacancy in the legislative seats where I grew up. So my district was Hollywood, Los Angeles, Silver Lake, Los Feliz, Glendale, Burbank, that part of California. And the guy who represented that district decided that he wanted to move on to other things. So there's a vacancy in the middle of the term. And, against my better judgment and against my wife's express desires, I decided to run. And by some miracle, I won. And I won 7 more elections, and I served 4 terms in the California legislature.
Wow. Now, that's pretty, that's a competitive district to jump into as, being brand new into politics. One of the things that I tell people is, when you're in, people who serve in Sacramento or Washington, D.C., it's not usually their first job in politics. They usually start out on a school board and maybe go to city council and then move into the assembly. But you went right into the assembly and in a district where I would say there are a lot of heavy hitters. There's a lot of people that were probably going for that job. What made you different? How were you able to be successful?
Kudos to you for knowing that, because a lot of people think like you still encounter like very educated billionaires who think, gee, I'm just going to run for the Senate and, as my first job, or
I can't tell you how many candidates I've run into, and it's like a total vanity thing. They're rich or they're whatever, they're famous, they're bored, or they're married to somebody who's rich and famous and bored, and they just decide that for their own, vanity, they're going to run for office. I would imagine in your district, there's a lot of that. So for you to be able to rise above and win, how did that happen?
So I think it was a lot of luck. I think people diminish the value of luck in politics, but it's funny that you mentioned that, because I ran against the president of the school board in the biggest city in my district, which was 40% of my district. I ran against 2 different presidents of the school board in 3 different elections. And by some miracle, I beat them every time. It's, usually it's people who hold local office. I like to think that I got elected because I out-hustled folks. I worked very, very, very hard. And on top of that, I was 2 other things. I was accessible and I tried to be authentic. And what I mean by that is, if somebody shot me an email, and they said, there's a super controversial bill. It's the most controversial bill going through Sacramento right now. How are you going to vote for it? I would say, I'm going to vote yes, or I'm going to vote no. And they'd be like, I'm so shocked you responded. I'm so shocked you told me how you were going to vote. And I guess a lot of people, they don't respond, or they respond with like, well, I'm considering both sides and this and that. It's like, this is how I'm going to vote. And they always told me my district appreciated that. They told me that by the time I left the legislature, I was getting 58,000 emails a year.
Jeez.
And that was the most of anybody in the assembly.
Wow.
And I think it's because the people who lived there knew that if they contacted me, I would write them back.
Okay, so you ran as a Democrat, and it was a heavy your district was heavy Democrat, right?
Well, it's interesting. When I was growing up, the district was Republican, and it was Republican until 1996. And then it was like the closest seat in the state of California, and it started getting more and more Democratic as the years have gone by. There are some conservative parts of my old district, North Glendale, for example, places like that. Burbank used to be very conservative, not so much anymore. But yeah, now, it's a heavily Democratic seat now.
So a heavily Democratic seat. What made you a Democrat?
Well, so when I was growing up, I was always explained that the Democratic Party was a party that believes in a fair shake for everybody. That's simple. That if you work hard, you pay your taxes, you keep your nose clean, you don't get in trouble, that the Democratic Party believes in a fair deal for you. And that's what made my dad a Democrat. That's what made me a Democrat. And I believe that is still the promise, the central promise of the Democratic Party. I also believe that, frankly, the Democratic Party has lost its way in many cases. I think that we've forgotten this like hey, let's look out for the working man. And it's now all these other random things, right? And I think we do best when we just try to say, hey, we're here for America, for everybody. And that's what we're fighting for.
So when did you leave office again? Remind me what year?
January 1, 2017.
2017.
Yeah, well, end of 2016. Yeah, 20.
Okay. And so do you feel like when you left, were you more or less Democrat, when you left office than when you started, or were you about the same?
Great question. So you had a couple things going on. Well, you had three things going on simultaneously as I was leaving office. Number one, you had me aging, right? And I think as people age, it's natural for them to be more skeptical of every new idea that someone floats. Number two, you had the rise of Trump. You had the country breaking into these very polarized camps where it feels more polarized than in recent years, or the times preceding it. Number three, you did have the Democratic Party going through some profound existential. I don't want to say growing pains because it's an old party, but you definitely have. I think even today you have a battle for control of the Democratic Party. So I mean, I felt sometimes that and look, I think every eclectic voting lawmaker feels like this, regardless of party. There were times when I was in Sacramento where I voted no on a Democratic bill. We took 2,500 votes every year, roughly. Okay. And I was always amazed when the headline would come out and it would be like, there's 3 members of the legislature who didn't vote no on a single bill all year. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I'm lucky to have 10 good ideas a year. I mean, I can't imagine 2,500 ideas and there wasn't one that you had a problem with. So, I voted no probably, well, okay. The statistics show that I voted no more than any other Democrat in my last year in office.
And most of the bill, I mean, let's be honest, most of the bills that make it through the process were originated by a Democratic member of the Assembly or Senate.
Yeah, no, and I mean, if a bill makes it to the floor of either house in California in modern times, then it has been approved by the majority party.
Yeah, I mean, I've even seen cases where a Republican will present an idea, and try to, form a bill basically, and they kill it and then steal the idea and and put it into their bill, and then boom, it becomes a Democratic bill. But
so your knowledge of California politics is significantly advanced compared to the average person I talk to in the media. That is a practice that I hate, by the way. It's like we used to say, Democrats in Sacramento used to say, we want Republican lawmakers to be more engaged. Yeah. And one of them would have a great idea. And then it'd be like, all right, we're going to kill your bill. So go golf the rest of the year. And we're going to and it's like that. No, that's not right. It's not morally right. It's not ethically right. And it's also not good for that person represents 500,000 Californians just like I do. And if they had an idea, they should have the right to take it all the way.
I completely agree. Okay, so I want to talk about Second Amendment in as public policy philosophically, but before I just want to make sure you still consider yourself a Democrat. You still generally support the Democratic Party. You're not or are you? I don't know. Let me know. I mean, have you?
No. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democrat.
You're a Democrat. Solid Democrat. You support Democrats. Are you involved with the party, either local or state or federal or?
So since I left office, the main role that I've gone from is gone from somebody who asks people for help to somebody who people ask help for or from. Yeah. So I get a lot of calls for fundraising. People ask me for my endorsement, for mentoring, for helping them shepherd through the process of running for office. And so that's my main way that I've stayed involved in politics.
Okay, so you are, and the point I want to get across to folks that are listening, you're a Democrat. You're not kind of a Democrat, or you didn't used to be a Democrat, or you aren't less of a Democrat than, you're a Democrat. You're a solid blue Democrat.
Yep.
Okay, so talk to me about the Second Amendment. First off, try to explain, where do you stand on the Second Amendment in general, and then maybe let's start talking a little bit more about some of the public policy surrounding the Second Amendment in California. So philosophically, where are you on the Second Amendment?
Well, so my favorite class in law school was constitutional law, and I got the highest grade in the state for constitutional law 1 and constitutional law 2. And those are the 2 con law classes that folks have to take. And I'm always amazed when people read 1 or 2 of the first 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights, but they kind of ignore other ones. And of course, the Second Amendment is a major part of the Bill of Rights. It was placed second. It was placed second for a reason. The most interesting thing that I've had to do with respect to the Second Amendment is I have a friend. He's a very, very smart guy, very accomplished in life, very wealthy, just a terrific guy. He wrote a book about the Second Amendment, and he took a position that was different from my beliefs, and I'm guessing different from yours. And he asked me to edit the book, and he asked me to write a foreword to the book. And I did for months and months and months. We went back and forth, and we looked into like colonial gun laws and like all sorts of different things and what it meant to be a member of the militia and all these different angles. And I actually left with a stronger belief in the Second Amendment than I had, by having to argue with a guy who was very much against the modern conception or the pro-gun conception of the Second Amendment. And so my understanding of it came from studying constitutional law. My understanding has deepened the more that I drill into it, and it's been a fascinating journey.
So I think people can have a strong opinion on the Second Amendment and the Constitution, and fully understand what the framers were intending and support, a lot of freedom and liberty when it comes to gun ownership, and still not personally be aligned with what the Second Amendment protects. Would you say that you personally think that it is a good idea in 2025 that the individuals, citizens of the United States, or people in the United States should preserve and have the right to keep and bear arms?
Yeah, for law-abiding citizens, that's an easy answer. The challenge that I think we face as a society is what to do with criminals, right? I mean, that's the toughest thing. I try to point out to people, especially demagogues who are always talking about so-called assault rifles, that most crime in the United States is committed by people who have handguns. Handguns are easy to smuggle. They're easy to conceal. I think even if, some people got their way and the Second Amendment was banned, criminals would still have handguns. I mean, this is a fact, right? Yeah. And so I try to view things as, what can we do as a society to make sure that everybody has a sense of community, that everybody feels like they are engaged, that young men have opportunities, that if you are noticing somebody at your church, at school, in your community, where you're thinking that that person feels like they might be planning something or doing something that is not right, or that they're going through a mental health crisis, that it's incumbent on each of us to step up. That the issue is way, way more complicated than the Second Amendment. It's an issue of pharmaceutical use. It's an issue of lack of community, lack of opportunities. These are things that I think play into it, just besides the Second Amendment analysis.
So do you, when you talk to people who are aligned with you in other political viewpoint, or basically when you talk to anybody who's a part of the Democratic Party,
right,
whether they were colleagues up in Sacramento or your buddy who was writing a book, or just folks, at a cocktail party, what do you think the most misunderstood part of the Second Amendment and gun ownership is, in Democratic Democratic voters?
That's a really easy answer, and I would say there's 2 things. So the first one is the whole musket idea, right? I'm sure you've heard that a bazillion times.
Right, that there were only muskets, and that's
yeah. That the technology froze in 1799 or something, and 1789. Of course, there's an easy riposte to that, and that is the First Amendment protects podcasts, protects the internet. It protects technologies that did not exist when the drafters framed the First Amendment. So that's an easy one. And I think even people, once they say it, they kind of can be made to realize how stupid that sounds pretty quickly. The second misconception is a little bit deeper, and that's the militia conception. Right? And what I try to explain to people that even if you think it just protects people who are part of the militia, that at the time that this was drafted, any citizen could become a member of the militia and own a gun. And so I don't see why even people think of that as a silver bullet. Now, at the time that the Second Amendment was drafted, to be a member of the militia, you had to be a white male who owned property. That was what citizenship was. But now that's not what citizenship is. Anybody over the age of 18 is a citizen. And, if you imagine a world where they said, well, you have to be a member of the militia to own a gun, I think half the states in the union would just say, all right, so join the militia. Right? Anybody over the age of it was to make it, I don't want to make it sound more easy than it was at the time the Second Amendment was drafted, but becoming a member of the militia was almost like registering to vote. It was seen as a civic duty, a civic option and a civic duty. You want to register to vote? Want to be a member of the militia? Go for it. And so these people who think that that would become this silver bullet, I think that's also based on a misunderstanding. And then the third thing that I'll say is that owning a gun in those times, particularly for people who lived in the frontier states, it was like owning a phone today or owning a computer.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't imagine life without it. It was an appliance. It was something you used to feed your family, to protect your livestock. I mean, it was something that was part of your daily life. You might even carry it with you at all times, like a phone. And so when they say, well, why weren't there more restrictions? And it's like, well, that would be like looking at our moment in time and saying, why don't they have restrictions on owning computers? I don't think most people could fathom if someone said, you've got to register your computer. They'd say, what are you talking about? Like, it would be such a weird thing. That is what gun ownership was when the time the Second Amendment was drafted. And I hope that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. So I want to talk a little bit about, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong and tell me if you remember, but I believe that gun violence restraining orders came to be while you were in office. Is that, do you recall?
I don't think so. I feel like they're older than my tenure, but I could be wrong. There could have been some expansion. You know a lot, so I mean, it's totally possible.
So you don't remember voting on it up or down?
I mean, let's put it this way.
I don't, but by the way, this isn't a gotcha question. I don't have the information in front, I started thinking, here's what I want to get to, Mike. So gun violence restraining orders, as you know, are basically they were sold to the voters as, and I don't know how much you know about gun violence restraining orders, but they were sold to the voters as, hey, if there's a lack of law, if there's a lack of policy out there, and somebody is clearly showing signs of danger, then a gun violence restraining order will kind of be a last resort in order for law enforcement to step in and at least try to prevent something from happening. If somebody is doing something that's not quite really, they're not sure if they can really arrest this person or prosecute this person, but they can at least take their guns away until they prove that this person's not a threat to himself or herself or others. That's how it was sold to the voters. And then it was implemented and everybody said, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best thing ever. And, look how great this is. But since it was implemented, it has not been this kind of gap filler. It hasn't been used as a last resort. It's been used as standard operating procedure. In other words, if law enforcement does anything, has any kind of arrest or interaction, practically just, some kind of official interaction, and somebody has a firearm, then, you can almost bet on the fact that there's going to be a gun violence restraining order involved. And I've seen people who were actually victims and, and it come to find out they had a firearm and boom, a gun violence restraining order was filed. And I've seen people who, roommates who've gotten into, arguments, and one of the roommates decided to, file a gun violence restraining order on the other, and they've been used, predatorily, I guess. And I'm just curious, how much do you know about gun violence restraining orders? And is there anything you have to say about them, or are you aware that they're being abused? Do you have any experience with them at all?
No, so the answer is I don't have much experience with them at all. When I was in the legislature, I remember many different debates on gun issues. This is not one that I remember being a huge one. There was a big debate about giving the Attorney General the ability to seize the backlog of people who supposedly were supposed to have their guns taken away, but they never got taken away.
Right.
That was a very, very, and I think it was just a funding issue. And I want to say there were like 50,000 Californians that were supposed to have guns taken away, and they hadn't been, and something like that. With restraining orders generally, I think the system is in need of some reform, particularly for two classes of restraining orders, whether they pertain to guns or anything else. The first is if somebody lies. We need to preserve the ability for people to feel like they can step forward and get a restraining order. But at the same time, if somebody lies in your circumstance, where the example you gave, where somebody is using it as a weapon,
vindictive,
then that person should be prosecuted for perjury. There should be very, very clear consequences when somebody does something like that. The second thing is, I think the standard of proof should be a little bit higher than just, gee, this is what I think. It's very rare in this country that we allow somebody to have a penalty when somebody just feels something or thinks something. But with restraining orders, that's often the case. And I think there should be some degree of law enforcement involvement where there's some evidence for most of these restraining orders to go forward.
So if you were going to give advice to someone who's passionate about the Second Amendment, a gun owner, an activist who's passionate about the Second Amendment, if you were going to advise them on how to relate to, how to convince, or how to talk to somebody who isn't a fan of the Second Amendment or isn't a fan of gun ownership, what's your advice? How do you break through? How do you convince them, or what resonates with them that maybe wouldn't resonate with someone who's pro Second Amendment? What would you say to them?
Great question. So what I tell everybody right now is do not underestimate how polarized the country is. Do not underestimate how much people are going to stereotype you for having a belief because the belief is different from theirs. They might automatically assume because somebody is a gun owner that person is a bigot, or that person is a far right activist or something. I think the best way to start out without being defensive is just to say, look, I'm a regular person. This is what I believe. I believe in protecting my family. I believe in protecting my business, and that's a core right. It's the right of self-defense. You could argue that right predates the Constitution, that it's a natural right. It's something that everybody has. And, I think you start there, you personalize it. And if they get into a discussion about the Second Amendment, and I'm talking the some of the things we talked about framing and militia thing, or the musket thing, just be prepared to give them a couple replies, maybe 2 sentences that explain better the historical context. And I think that's the best way to do it. Just stay calm and point out to them too that there are lots and lots of Democrats who believe in the Second Amendment.
Okay, and last question. Why should Democrats change their position or evolve their position on Second Amendment?
Well, for starters, because it's the right thing to do. I mean, it is something that I believe. Look, I don't agree with Clarence Thomas's opinion. I think there are other ways to get at it. But I think the core of the Second Amendment there is a truth there. There is a historical truth. There's a constitutional truth. There is a moral truth. And so you can start by you could almost end the discussion there that Democrats should do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But from a pragmatic standpoint as well, I think that in a society where property crime is on the rise, in a society where police budgets are strained and response times are going down, are going up all across the state, people feel more intensely aware of their need to protect themselves. And so from a practical standpoint, we're going to lose voters if we make people feel bad for protecting themselves.
Good answers. We're out of time. I got to tell you though, you got to come back on.
Sure.
You can't throw out at the end of the interview. You can't throw out I don't agree with Justice Thomas. That's a whole. We got to have a whole discussion. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, but we're out of time. So I got to have you back on, and we got to talk about that. I really appreciate this interview, and I appreciate you reaching out. And I thought it was fascinating. So thank you so much for making the time. If people want to know more about you or want to follow you, is there anything you want to promote or talk about?
No, I mean, look, people can find me on X at Mike Gatto, as long as they spell my last name right, Gatto. They can also find me on MikeGatto.com, but I'm not promoting anything.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Mike. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. Having me. All right, man.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
My name is John Baldwin, and for the past 20 years, I defended freedom and democracy around the world. From my humble beginnings as an undesignated plane captain to preparing real-world intelligence products during the early parts of the global war on terror as an intelligence specialist. As a surface warfare officer, I witnessed firsthand the evolution of anti-terrorism, force protection techniques, tactics, and procedures. Needless to say, I've been blessed with the diversity of skills that I'm now bringing to you, the resilient and prepared American. I'll not only teach you how to become your own information resource, but how to be an asset to your community when it matters most. If you want to learn more, check out gunrunnersradio.com. Follow me on Instagram at Red Rooster Gorilla.
Okay, there is a whole lot going on in the AB 1127 and Glock world. There's all kinds of soap opera-esque drama and speculation and, where do we go from here? So I wanted to get somebody who's extremely knowledgeable on all the above to come talk to us. And I went directly to Bill Sack. He's an attorney for Second Amendment Foundation. If you are not a member of Second Amendment Foundation, stop this broadcast right now and go become a member. They've done some fantastic work, and Bill Sack is an awesome guy. Not only is he a Second Amendment attorney, but he's also a gun enthusiast. And I think, Bill, I think you're the perfect person to talk to about what's going on with AB 1127, what's going on with Glock, what could be going on in the future, where we are. I think you have enough knowledge from all worlds that it's I appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, you bet. Happy to be here. Good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you. Okay, so just to bring everybody up to speed, real quick, so Glock, basically what happened was the state of California said, hey, we think we want to ban Glocks, essentially is what they wanted to ban. I mean, state of California wants to ban everything, but this was their opportunity to really sink their teeth into a ban and say, hey, Glocks are easily converted into full auto. And there's even an illegal, which is illegal in most cases. There's even a switch that people can make or illegally buy, and that's illegal. And then they can put it on their Glock and illegally make it even more illegal. I mean, the whole thing's illegal, but they decided, hey, you know what? Because you're even able to do that, we want to ban that item. And the way they did it, the AB 1127 doesn't say anything about Glock. It talks about this cruciform part, and it's actually a metal piece in your Glock that is in the shape of a cross. Now the reality is, and I don't think people stop and think about this, and I'll bet you some folks are going to argue with me in the comments, but A Glock is easily converted to a full auto. When they first invented Glock, there was a version of it, a Glock 18, that was meant to be full auto. That's true. But what's also true is just because of that doesn't mean you can ban it, doesn't mean it is bad, doesn't mean that you should make a law against it. That's absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. But, and I think too often we in the gun owner world allow them to define the argument, and, they kind of draw the box around us, and then we try to argue out of it. And I don't think we should do that. So they passed this law. There were some changes, and the law passed. NRA, Second Amendment, Foundation, FPC said, fine, we have a lawsuit ready to go. But then Glock threw everybody a curveball, and we still don't have all the details on exactly what's going on. But Glock came out and said, hey, you know what? Gen 3, 4, and 5, they're all going away, and we're going to replace it with Gen V, which I've since found is actually Roman numeral 5. So it's actually they've kind of the Gen 3 and 4 and whatever, that was kind of semi-official. It wasn't real. Glock didn't come up with that. It was kind of, Glock owners came up with it, and Glock kind of adopted it. So I think they're trying to take it back, and say, hey, these are, Gen V, Glock version V, Roman numeral 5. Anyway, so what we want to talk about, Bill, is where does that leave us? Where are we with the lawsuit, and what are your thoughts? Maybe, I know that's a really broad question, but I've been talking for too long. So lay it on us, man. Where are we at with this whole thing?
Yeah, sure. So we can start, I guess, a little bit let's start at the beginning. Okay. So AB 1127 created a new definition called machine gun convertible pistols, I think was what they called it. And the basic argument is what you laid out, which is that certain handguns are too easily converted into fully automatic. They created this new definition, which includes it has to have a cruciform trigger bar, and it has to have a user replaceable backplate that's easy to swap out without tools, such that you can put some sort of a conversion device on the back of it. And we all know what they were aiming at. They were aiming at Glock pistols. Because there are, book reps that you could buy on the dark web, official made ones, things like that. Basic argument was that they're easily convertible into machine guns, and therefore we have to make them double super secret illegal, because as you rightly pointed out, converting a gun to automatic without the appropriate licensure and regulatory hurdles is already illegal, and the conversion devices are largely illegal, and putting them together is illegal, and then doing gangland murder with them is also illegal. But if all of that is not sufficient to deter crime, let's take the gun that you can do all of those illegal things to, and then whip, which are already illegal, and make those illegal also. That's the theory. It's as asinine and convoluted as it sounds, and yet here we are. So this kind of is a good way to think about it, is to think about one of our other cases, which is challenging the Unsafe Handgun Act in California. Everybody knows it as the handgun roster, which created a number of other requirements that guns have to have in order to be legal for sale in California. We got an injunction in that case, preventing enforcement. The holding being that it was unconstitutional. That is now up on appeal in the Ninth Circuit. And so, having dealt the blow that a large chunk of the California roster requirements were likely unconstitutional, rather than back and contemplate, what they did was they be California legislators. They doubled down and all of them to include the most popular handgun in the country. So clearly they have less than and are in continuing to vote there, and them signed the bill late on Friday. We were ready at the courtroom steps on Monday morning to file our lawsuit.
Which awesome job. And where did you guys know? I mean, was there any communication from Glock? Now, I remember back in April, we actually did an episode where Glock said, hey, we're going to discontinue a bunch of models. And we talked about it. And honestly, I didn't see a whole lot of chatter about that, but we did a whole episode on it. So it's not like it was a, super secret, but they did announce, and I don't know, coincidentally or not, they did announce, hey, starting November 1st, no more Gen 3, 4, 5, to distributors. They told the distributors, hey, no more of these. We're going to come out with this new Gen V. Did Glock communicate that with you guys, or was that were you blindsided? And how does it affect the lawsuit, or are we not sure?
So to answer your first question, we found out about Gen V. You're right, by the way, is super dumb. Going from Gen 5 to Gen Roman numeral 5, just as a rabbit hole, when Beretta came out with the 92, not the 92, but the 90 dash. You remember that gun? It was like the 92 that had melted. And so they had the 92 and the 92. Anyway, that's an aside. So no, we found out when everybody else did that this V conversion or whatever it's going to be, V updating is going to be a thing. You found out when the Glock store thing leaked and everything else did, just like everybody else on X did. Exactly what the details of it are and how it's going to affect the case are still very much unknown. We're attempting the back channel communication just to get some more information. And obviously I can't share any of that, but I can share that we don't have a lot of the answers that we're looking for as of the filming of this Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, I guess if the cruciform is being removed in this new version, then that essentially would make that law null and void, and then there wouldn't be a lawsuit that you would be able to associate with it? Or could you still have a lawsuit, there just wouldn't be firearms being produced that qualify under that law?
Right, great question. So the thinking is that presumably what Gen V is an adjustment to the fire control system such that it doesn't use a cruciform trigger bar and would then evade this new definition that's been created. I think the official information that came out about Gen V also said something about minor slide changes, probably to the way that the backplate works. But that's all speculative. Nobody really knows yet. Nobody's seen the thing. So, right, theoretically, anyway, it would make sense, given the timing of all of this, that what they're trying to do is make the guns such that they, one, evade the definition, and two, just don't work with commonly available but largely illegal conversion switches. Now, in terms of what that means for the lawsuit, that is a more complicated question. But once we know more of these details, what we ultimately will need to reckon with from a legal perspective is, are there going to be guns, and to what extent are there going to be guns that are going to be affected by the? If Glock is changing all of their stuff, then the vast majority of the inventory would, in theory, no longer be affected. But there are lots of other kind of nitty-gritty details that we would need to work out and figure out if they would be otherwise available in California anyway, whether there's going to be a Gen V version of Gen 3, because Gen 3 are the only Glock pistols that are on the roster. So it doesn't matter if you change a Gen 5 to a Gen 5/V, now it's still just going to have the roster preventing it from being available in California. So it's still a lot of unanswered questions in terms of practicality of, are these guns ever going to see California, and what that means for the lawsuit. Hopefully we'll get some more answers early next week, and we'll make adjustments if necessary.
I find it hilarious that Gen 3s are the only ones on the roster when Gen 5 makes it more difficult for people to convert them to automatic firearms. Like that was part of the design change going from Gen 3 through Gen 4 and Gen 5 was that it is trickier to do to a Gen 5 than it was to do to a Gen 3. But for some reason,
Right. We picture Gavin Newsom shaking his fist. Why don't they make this more difficult? And Glock's like, we did 5 years ago.
Well, there's an interesting thing that I haven't seen a lot of people put together, and there were a lot of changes to AB 1127, and one of the things included in AB 1127 was, and I'm going to paraphrase, but essentially, if you fix your product and no longer have a cruciform piece in there, we will, as long as it's done by the end of 2026, we'll fast track your product back onto the roster, and you don't even have to comply with the other roster crap. As long as you go in and change that cruciform part, then boom, you can go right back into business, and you don't have to have the other things that the roster requires. First off, Bill, did I explain that sufficiently and accurately?
Yeah, I think basically, I mean, Glock Gen 3 is not on the roster because it meets all of the requirements of the roster.
It's grandfathered.
Glock Gen 3 is on the roster because it was grandfathered in.
Yeah.
So what they did with the amendment was they said, look, if you fix part of the firing control mechanism and or the slide such that it doesn't meet the definition that we just created out of thin air, a convertible pistol, then we will allow it back in. We'll basically allow you to keep your grandfather status, but with the updated trigger bar, essentially. That's what the amendment did. And so that's why, to answer the question from a couple minutes ago, like, is there going to be a Gen 3 with a new trigger bar and or slide plate assembly? Is the question that we don't know an answer to yet, and is one of the largest outstanding questions as to what would be available in California, even if the trigger bar question were fixed. Like, if they're only fixing Gen 5, then problem still remains that Glocks are not going to be available for sale in California. If whatever they do to the fire control unit also applies, can be applied to Gen 3, and they are continuing to make Gen 3, then they will be on the roster or be allowed to get back from the roster when they're fixed and go around that new machine gun convertible pistol definition if they don't have the combination of the cruciform trigger bar and the back blade that these are replaceable. These are all the things that we don't know, but yeah, it's a little bit of 4D chess trying to understand it all.
It and there's a couple of, it's almost like a choose your own adventure book. You know what I mean? One thought that I had was, I'll bet you Glock met with California, and I'll bet you there was some kind of discussion, and that's why that made it into the bill, and Glock was already planning on doing this because, like I said, back in April they already said, hey, we're going to discontinue some of these models and whatever. But the other part of this is where I think there may still be a struggle and a fight and a lawsuit is, I definitely get the feeling that Glock is trying to kind of clean up their inventory and maybe even go so far, like right now they have 2 different sized slides that for a 45, like one's a little bit slimmer than the 30 is a little bit fatter than the, you know what I mean? It feels like, and then like a 26X is similar to I think this could possibly be their opportunity to just kind of clean up their product line. Now, if they do that though, like you said, if they change it too much, then I think the struggle and the conflict will be California saying, nope, if all you did was get rid of that cruciform part, then we'd put you back on the roster. But you did more than that. Therefore, now you have to have all these ridiculous other things. And Glock's going, well, we're not doing the ridiculous other things. And that might be a fight. I don't know. Or maybe California, for once in their existence, will in good faith, just
Take
say,
the win.
yeah,
Take
and
the
just be like,
win.
all right, great, whatever. But I don't know. So is that a possibility though? Like if Glock goes too far, do you see California saying, that's too much, that's more than we said, and therefore we're gonna stab you in the back, and we're not gonna let you sell your product here in California, and then you got a lawsuit again?
I mean, all things are possible. Honestly, I have no idea.
This is all speculation. By the way, Bill, this is just for everybody listening. A lot of this is so much speculation. I think it's just a way for us to reveal some of the things that are happening. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize there was that section in AB 1127 that would help them fast track it. So now we're just kind of speculating. We don't know. We got to wait for everything to come out. I'm watching people have meltdowns that Glocks are totally different now, and why would they commit suicide, whatever. Everyone just relax, and but there are some possibilities. There are some avenues that that are worth some speculation. So we're not going to hold you to anything, Bill, I promise.
No, of course. I mean, when we look at the stuff that was discontinued, right, that was announced, I don't know, a month ago or so, and it's on Block's website, like that's not a secret, the list of things that are discontinued, including my beloved 34. And the 17L, which is a shame. Hopefully they bring them back. But what was not on the discontinued list were the most popular Gen 3 things that presumably would have otherwise remained available in California. Like Gen 319 was not discontinued. Gen 317 was not discontinued. Gen 326, if I recall, was not discontinued on that list. Right. So a bunch of things were cleaned up. And I think you're right. Like a lot of things didn't, just kind of from a business perspective, make sense anymore, to have things that were overly complicated. I mean, on Gen 5, they had like 3 different ways to make a 17, like they had the 49 slide, and then the 47, and then the 17, like they were all the same gun. So some of it, I think it was just a streamlining of their SKU list. I think that, I mean, again, this is just Bill Sack, the gun owner, and Glock nerd, not gun lawyer speaking. Whether or not they were talking to California as this law was going through, I don't know. It's entirely possible. I mean, this bill is not the only piece of legislation and litigation that's out there on this block switch issue. There are other jurisdictions in other states that are either suing or looking to pass laws about, the ease by which you can convert Glocks into machine guns. So it's something that they, again, speculating, may have perceived as just a legal liability thing, that like it's easy enough to fix the trigger bars so it's a different shape. Like if we can stamp the trigger bars so they're straight instead of X shape, fine. And if they do the same thing, you know what I mean? Like, as soon as AB 1127 came out, the first thing I did was rip my 49 apart, which is in my desk drawer, and look at the performance trigger, because I have the stupid performance trigger in mind, and see like, wait, does that have a cruciform trigger bar? Maybe they'll just throw the performance triggers and everything. But they think it's X-shaped enough that I think it probably doesn't meet the mold. But again, as Bill Sack, the Glock nerd, is Glock going to change more than what California allows? I don't know. Has Glock changed anything from Gen 1 until Gen 5?
Finger grooves, right?
If there's a niche that I know about, it's that they don't like changing anything ever. So I would assume, again, just kind of half jokingly, tongue in cheek, that if the goal is to get themselves so that they can get back on the roster, that they would be working with presumably the DOJ to make sure that they're doing that in a way that's productive. Again, that's just a guess.
They definitely are. As far as companies go, they're the least team player. I don't want to put it into a negative, but they're kind of just their own. They're like
I respect them for it.
They just kind of do their own thing.
I do, and I respect them for it.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I wish they'd like communicate with not just their customers, but with Second Amendment Foundation and what, you know what I mean? They don't seem to really.
I imagine there's got to be a reason, though. You know, I got to give them respect of they've been around for a long time. They know what they're doing, and if they're not saying things, there's got to be a reason. And
Well,
like I got to
when
imagine that it's a good thing, and there's going to be a benefit, and it's going to work out fine.
when your company's motto is your company's name plus the word perfection,
Right.
I think that the reason is arrogance is what I think it is. But anyway.
Well, I don't know. I think that no matter what, people are going to be upset about whatever Glock had done,
Yeah.
right? Like I see people melting down about, oh, they're trying to get around this unconstitutional law. They're pro gun law, gun control, whatever. Like I see people jumping to all these conclusions. We have to remember that Glock originally decided that they weren't going to put magazine disconnects in guns. People didn't like that. They were like, well, they just don't want to do this thing that would get them on the roster. People are never going to be happy. Now they're doing something allegedly, hopefully, to get around this AB 1127. People don't like that either. They're like, oh, now they're basically letting the government get away with this. At the end of the day, this was a liability for Glock too. I don't think Glock likes that their guns are the criminals, selection of choice for gang crime and stuff because of Glock switches. And you do see, Glock switches being used in gang violence. And so I'm sure for Glock, this has been a long time in the making. They probably knew the writing was on the wall for years that this was eventually going to be a problem. I don't view this as them, being okay with these overreaching gun laws. I view this as them doing what's best for their business, and no matter what they did or didn't do, people wouldn't be happy about it.
Well, and I think there's, and this is pure speculation, but there's another part that I touched on earlier. The first time I ever shot a Glock was 1991, and that was before anybody else in the room here was born. I know. So
Thank you.
But I remember back in the early 90s, the idea was late 80s, early 90s, but the idea was that they wanted to take market share from Uzi and from Mac 10. Like it was a very real thing that, hey, we made this automatic pistol, but it can be semi-automatic, and it just never took off. The Glock 18 is kind of a footnote in history. No one's buying it. No military is using it, anything like that. So it's almost like, look, it's no sweat off our nose to redesign this thing, because it was originally designed to be this full auto, and semi-auto. So all right, let's redesign it so it's only full or semi-auto, or at least it's in compliance with these states, and clean up their SKU, like Bill said, and kind of streamline their product line. I mean, this is they haven't changed anything in decades. This seems like a good opportunity to say, hey, you know what? Their patents have run out and people are starting to clone them. I mean, they kind of got to do something, and there's been a lot of high quality handguns that have come out that people are, it used to be 15 years ago. I mean, geez, man, there was a time for about 10, 15 years, Glock was everything, and people were kind of transitioning away from 1911s, even Berettas. Berettas were, people were all excited about them. But about 10, 15 years, Glock was everything. And then, SIG starts, taking over and some other handguns. So I don't know. I think they're such a business, maybe even more so. Like, you look at like Daniel Defense has these commercials that are very patriotic and they're about self-defense and whatever. Glock's a business. Like they're running a business, So this just all feels like a business decision. And probably, I hope in the end, it's a really good one, because I'm a fan of all the gun organizations and all the gun manufacturers. So I hope it works out for them. So anyway, I got a little long-winded there. Bill, what else do we need to know about AB 1127 and SAF and this whole situation? Is there anything else you want to add? Because I want to talk about the school search gun owner thing before we leave.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to touch on AB 1127?
I think we covered the Glock ban pretty well. The only thing I think I'll leave on this issue is just, keep apprised of our social media. We're on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. When we know more, you'll know more.
Good. So, okay. So get us up to date on Apparently, there was a gun owner at a high school who lost the ability to their Fourth Amendment rights because they were found out they were a gun owner or something. Bring us up to date on that, because that was super interesting.
Yeah, so this was another fascinating case that we filed just last week. The case is called Harrington, and it's out of New Hampshire. And the case involves a young man named Jack Harrington, who at that time was a high school senior, 18 years old. And Jack is a lawful gun owner. He has a handgun, and he sometimes keeps his handgun in his truck so he can keep his gun with him. New Hampshire is I forget if they call it a constitutional carry or permitless carry per their laws up there. But in any event, he carries the gun, he keeps it with him in his truck sometimes, lawfully, in compliance with all state and federal laws. And one day, on the school bus, going to, I think, baseball practice, he was telling some friends of his about how he had been pulled over for some minor traffic infraction or something, that he had told the police officer that he had his gun with him in the truck, and the cop was super cool about it. And he had a great interactions with the police officer. And I don't even know if he got a ticket. But the point of the story was, I was kind of nervous because I had my gun with me, and the cop was super cool about it, and it was a non-issue. And isn't that great? So a week or two later, apparently that story percolated up through the school administration, and they pulled Jack out of class. And they said to him, Jack, we heard that you're a gun owner. We heard that you own a gun. And he said, uh-huh. And they said, we heard that you keep it with you sometimes. And he said, uh-huh. And they said, we want to search your truck. And he says, no. I don't ever bring it to school because I know that it's unlawful to do that. I keep my gun with me and carry my gun legally outside of school, but I never bring it here, and never have said that I would or have. And they demanded that they search this young man's truck. They harassed him at length, and I think it was the vice principal's office, in like a 3-on-1 haranguing of the poor guy. He repeatedly said, no, you don't have consent to search anything. Pound sand. Well, they searched the truck anyway, and they found nothing, because he doesn't bring his gun to school because he knows it's unlawful to do that. And when he's at school, his gun is locked up at home in accordance with all local, state, and federal laws. So the point of the story is that you cannot use the fact that somebody exercises their Second Amendment right as ground to search their vehicle. Now, in the school context, it's a lower hurdle than for you and me to be searched in our private capacity, which would be probable cause. The police have to have probable cause that a crime has been committed in order to search you. They need to have a warrant or probable cause in some other context. At the school level, it's a lower hurdle. It's reasonable suspicion. But even still, simply saying, hey, we heard that you own a gun outside of school, is not reasonable suspicion that you've committed a crime. It's only evidence that you exercise your rights. And so relying solely on the knowledge that this young man was a gun owner cannot be constitutional grounds to search him. They chose to do so anyway. And so this new lawsuit is going to make clear, hopefully, that simply being a gun owner and choosing to exercise of your fundamental right is not justification for law enforcement or other authorities to trample on your Fourth Amendment rights.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's fantastic. I am really excited about Second Amendment Foundation and what you guys are doing. You guys have this really great, rich history, and it just feels like the last few years that there's been a spark that's turned into an inferno, and you guys are lighting it up, man. You guys are doing a great job with all your lawsuits. You guys are super supportive of Gun Owners Radio and San Diego County gun owners, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I loved Gun Rights Policy Conference in Utah, and I'm looking forward to next year. So please thank the whole crew and everything that you guys do, and phenomenal job. Anything else? Anything else you want to touch on, or you want people to know?
No, I guess I'll just say, thanks for having us. Thank you for the support. I mean, both you personally and San Diego County gun owners have been such a great partner on multiple cases and just on all things California gun law. I always know that if I have a question about a bill that's being circulated or talked about, I can call Mike and get the down low on if the thing's going to pass or what I need to know. It was great to meet you finally and shake your hand at GRPC. And we are in the process of deciding like right now where GRPC next year is going to be. So if you have a vote,
you give us a hint, or what? Are there like 3 or 4 options?
Can we vote?
I think it's still pretty wide open. So if you guys have a vote, I'm pushing for Tahiti. I think West Florida would be nice.
Well, it's going to be like Tahiti, Alabama, or something like that. I don't know. I heard. What do you think? What do you think, Dakota?
I always go back and forth between a gun-friendly place and a gun-not-friendly place, because we talk about this sometimes. But when you live in a place that's not very pro-gun, I feel like the people there are a little bit more invested in making change and working hard about pro Second Amendment stuff, but I also don't want to be spending my money in a cesspool like Chicago. So like it's this like catch-22. Do you want it in a pro-gun place or not so much?
Alicia, what do you think?
Well, I think attendance is better when you're in a pro-gun state. Because if you look at, I will say there's a lot of people like we had in Sydney, like, nah, I can't bring my guns.
Right,
I'm not going. I'm all about a pro-gun state is where I'm at. So
well, I'd rather spend my money in pro-gun states, so that works.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually going to announce a scholarship program. We're going to try to fund a bunch of activists from San Diego to go to the next GRPC, just because it was so valuable. So I don't care where it is. We're going to get people there. We're going to go and we're going to enjoy it. So can't wait for the announcement.
Yeah. Right on.
All right, Bill. Bill Sack from Second Amendment Foundation. If you're not a member, become a member. Thanks a lot for your time, man.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Since 2019, more than 1,400 women have applied to be a part of Not Me CA. What began as a small program has grown into a movement that is empowering women across our community. Since 2021, we've hosted educational shooting socials every month, where about a dozen women at a time come together to learn and to build confidence. We've also granted over a dozen firearms to women who could not afford one, ensuring that cost is never a barrier to safety. Our work has been recognized at the highest level in San Diego County, and in 2023, the County Board of Supervisors honored Not Me SD with a proclamation, and in 2024, the City of Escondido did the same. But the real reward comes from the lives that we've impacted. We offer a series of classes from Stop the Bleed to pepper spray and situational awareness and women's self-defense, alongside with firearms training and CCW support. Survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault know they have a safe place to turn, and every participant is paired with a mentor to guide them and support them every step of the way. At Not Me CA, our mission is clear: to give women the courage, knowledge, and power. Created by women for women, we are here to ensure that every woman has the tools, training, and confidence that she needs to protect herself and to live without fear. But we cannot do this work alone. We need your help. Your donations directly provide training, mentorship, and even firearms to women who otherwise would have no way to protect themselves. Every dollar you give equips another woman with safety and with hope. Please join us. Invest into courage, invest into empowerment, and invest into women's safety. Together, we can change lives.
Okay, it's election season already. The election, of course, is still over a year away, except for the special election, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the general election is next November, and we already have some really strong candidates that need your support. One of them is a guy I've known for years now, and he's a strong Second Amendment guy. He's right here in San Diego in North County, and he's running for state senate. His name is Armin Kurdian. Armin, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks so much for having me on.
You bet, man. So you're running for state senate. First off, tell us about the district that you're running for.
Certainly. So this district goes from Pacific Beach in San Diego County all the way up the coast through Oceanside, Vista, into Camp Pendleton, and then into Orange County. So it's about 20% Hispanic, about 57% white, and there's a mix of Asian Pacific Islander and other folks. So it's a very long, extended district between San Diego and Orange counties.
And you're running, there's an incumbent, right? It's not an open seat. There's somebody in that seat currently.
Yes, Catherine Blakespear, the former mayor of Encinitas,
who is enormously anti-gun. I can't explain just how anti-gun she is. She actually was involved in the formation of some of the local Brady organization, meetings and groups. She's extremely anti-gun. She's an anti-gun person who ran for office and won. She's not someone who ran for office and then decided to be anti-gun. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not sure if people pick up what I'm trying to say, but what it does is it makes her a total zealot when it comes to the Second Amendment. Her voting record absolutely reflects that. So trying to get her out of a position of power where she can vote on your Second Amendment rights should be a top priority. So I'm really, really glad, Armin, that you're running for this district. I've known you for years. I know philosophically you're right with us on Second Amendment, and you've been a fantastic person when it comes to being a part of your community. You're very involved. You've helped with other campaigns. You've helped with other community projects. You're a fantastic candidate. But what really made you run? Why did you finally decide, hey, I got to do this?
So, it's a lot of things. Like you say, I love serving my community. I'm a patriot. I love my country. I served in the Navy for 25 years. I was a naval flight officer, retired as a captain. And I love my country and it matters to me. But you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. And as I was thinking about all these things about what gets me up in the morning, frankly, there are so many people in Sacramento right now that are so disconnected from the people they are ostensibly there to represent. A lot of the unions have a death grip on the legislators in Sacramento, and if for no other reason than to just supplant one person in Sacramento with somebody who actually cares about other folks. Because, frankly, if I win this race, I'm going to miss time with my family and I'm going to get a pay cut. I'm going to lose a lot of time to matter to our state. And there's a lot of people who simply don't have a voice, and they don't have the ability to flee the state like 1.5 million people others did. They don't have the money to send their kids to private schools or home schools, despite the fact that our public school enrollment is at the lowest level since 1990. They don't have that wherewithal. They're just barely trying to make ends meet, and they need support.
Now, in the district, it's an uphill battle. She's, the district makeup and her name ID, it's definitely an uphill battle. But what do you think is your strong point? What do you have, or what are you going to do in order to win? And what kind of support have you gotten from other groups and organizations?
Interestingly, she is not popular in her home city of Encinitas. She did brought in a lot of development, high density development into a city that was not really geared up for it. And there's a lot she has done. And this is a big problem for her. Now, she has tremendous union support. She has tremendous support from the teachers' unions as well. Very narrow kinds of issues. And they will do whatever they can to keep their, to keep the money flowing to her so that she can keep the money flowing back to them. But more importantly, and this is something that I tell a lot of folks up and down the chain, because I do candidate recruitment and training for the for the San Diego County Republican Party. I wrote a guidebook on new campaigns. I've organized multiple campaigns and coordinated walking to try to basically enhance our ability and increase our chances for winning. But what I tell folks is, while the issues are important and you got to make it very simple for folks to understand, actually connect with the people that they represent on an emotional level is a big reason why Republicans are happening in New York City right now. You've got someone who calls himself a Democrat socialist who's just this side of a communist. Jude Hader is about to be elected the mayor of New York City. And why? He's up against two folks. One is a disgraced governor of the state of New York who seems indifferent, doesn't smile, doesn't seem happy. And the other guy, Curtis Lewa, even though he's got some good ideas, comes across as angry all the time. If you look at the three of them together and you don't have time to watch the news, you're not involved politically, who are you going to vote for? It's pretty obvious. So just by talking to people and listening to people, I had a great conversation with a couple of folks on a plane the other day. I'm just listening to more of a good conversation. I'm talking to them. I told them, and it was a great conversation. You just have to listen to folks and understand where they're coming from, because a lot of us want the same thing, but the path to get there is very, very different. And right now, the path that the supermajority in Sacramento has us on is, I don't know, in some ways we may be past the point of no return, but hopefully we can at least start limiting some of the damage that they're doing.
So on paper, despite the fact that your district is, like I said, a little bit of an uphill battle, you think that they're ready to go a different direction because of some of her slip ups, and then generally it just feels like the country's attitude has changed over the last year or so. It feels like we've kind of hit a tipping point, and people are going, all right, some of this extreme ridiculousess, is too much, and they're going back to a more traditional, American, sensical, opinion about most political things. You feel like that's happening in your district?
Yeah, you got to remember, come election time, that's when 3/4, 2/3 of the seat, they may not be paying attention, like I talked about. Now, this district has a 5.3% Democrat advantage. Now, it was 6.7 when Matt Gunderson ran in 2022, so it's actually moved to the right. And whatever happens with Prop 50, it's not going to change these lines. If you haven't put your ballot in, you're listening to this, you need to go fill it out and turn it in right now. And if you did not get a ballot, then go get one and turn it in right now, so that folks don't have to come and chase you down. We're very tired. And we saw how much more red, even though the state still went for the vice president in the last election, it wasn't nearly the margin that Joe Biden got in 2020. So folks are sick and tired of this far left progressivism, even though they're very, very loud and they're very poignant and hateful. They are still who they are, and they don't represent the entirety of the Democratic Party. And I know I can get a lot of Democrats to come to vote for me because they're working class Americans. And like I said, about 90% of this district is Hispanic. And I've got a plan to reach out to them, to connect with them on a personal level for family, community. They're very religious. They don't buy a lot of this boys and girls sports kind of garbage. They are not far left progressives en masse. They are reachable, and I think we can pull a lot of them over to this side.
That's interesting. What's the success story? Have you actually heard from somebody who said, hey, I voted for her, I'm voting for you, or hey, I campaigned, or hey, we're a group that normally would support her, but we're leaving, or what's a good success story?
Yeah, there are a couple of groups that I've connected with in Encinitas, and hopefully set up some meet and greets with them that have basically said that exact same thing. That they were they're not necessarily excited, but and voted for her and supported her, and now that's certainly not the case. Pretty much every small business owner I have spoken to has said, the small business climate is bad, and she has a tremendous number of bad small business votes. Let alone the 2A types of topics. She voted for AB 1228, the fast food worker minimum wage. That's cost 22,000 jobs in this state. She made it illegal for owners and managers to have what's called, the captive audience kind of meeting with employees to talk about labor relations. Obviously, it's a very pro-union kind of thing. Bills that target small mom and pop recyclers. Bills that redefine what it means for discrimination, which just opens up the floodgates as if they weren't wide enough already for all kinds of lawsuits that people can bring against their owners and their bosses. So a tremendous amount of bad legislation that's coming out of there. So
let's talk about Second Amendment. Obviously, we're Gun Owners Radio, so talk to us about why is the Second Amendment. I think a lot of people would be tempted to shy away from Second Amendment in your race and in your district, and you're not. You're absolutely saying, hey, this is something that's important. I want to go on Gun Owners Radio. I want to talk to gun owners, and make sure that they understand I'm an ally. Why is the Second Amendment important to you?
We've talked about this ad nauseum and say, well, let's just take the guns away from people. Okay. So if you eliminate a gun, you snap your fingers, maybe the guns go away, but what is left behind? Depression, mental illness, social media. So you haven't cured the problem. And that is a big, big issue in the state and frankly for our country as a whole. And by focusing on the wrong thing, there's still going to be a lot of people out there. And if you take the gun away from them for, gun assisted suicide, they're going to find another way to do it. They're going to drive themselves off a cliff. They'll overdose on drugs. Shoot, 100,000 people dying from addiction and drugs over the last few years. This is a very, very serious problem. And, it's not necessarily a foremost issue because folks haven't really necessarily talked about it, but you support the Second Amendment by supporting mental illness and supporting cures for mental illness, addiction, and going after these kinds of things very seriously. There's been a very enabling and facilitating policy, especially as these kinds of things relate to homelessness. People who've been living on the streets. So either die or be a victim of a violent crime or commit one. If you're homeless, that is patently unacceptable. So this is what matters, frankly. This is what we need to do in order to take care of our people. This is the kind of thing, Jim Desmond is, has got money for a mental health facility. I believe it was in Price City. That's under construction. Hopefully will be open soon. We're going to need a lot more of those to treat these kinds of folks. And then it's also related to parents and kids. The state is trying to drive a wedge between parents and children and the nuclear family and the familial home. You do more of that, you're going to drive more kids to violence and depression and mental illness. So it's all interrelated and all tied together. It's all root cause analysis. And if you haven't properly diagnosed what the problem is, then you can't solve the problem.
Great. Well, it's a winnable district. I think you're a fantastic candidate. I'm looking forward to watching you fight your way to Sacramento. If people want to help you, and if you're anywhere near San Diego, this is an excellent opportunity for you to truly get involved and help a campaign that's got a real shot, that will make a real difference. How can people get a hold of you? Where do they find you on the internet, and how can they volunteer or donate to your campaign?
Certainly. So I try to be as accessible as I possibly can. My website is simple. It's www.curdianforsenate.com. I'm on Instagram at RealArmandCurdian, or I'm on Twitter as well, Armand Curdian. My email is just Armand, ARMEN, at curdianforsenate.com. And my number is 760-332-8673. This is a winnable district, as you say, Michael. Folks have got to understand this. It is possible with the right message. We have a strategy to actually go and win. It will be hard. It will be challenging, but it's going to be rewarding.
Thank you so much for spending the time. Armand, I really appreciate everything that you do. I admire you very, very much. You do a great job. You put your money where your mouth is. You stand up and help people, and thank you so much for all that you do.
Thanks much. Send contribution. Okay, bye-bye.
Right, take care.
So when you're using it on your firearms, because it takes about 3 cleanings, so I like to say it's a clean shoot process, much like seasoning a cast iron skillet. So you're going to field strip your firearm, break it down, and then you're going to put our product on piece by piece by piece, covering the entire firearm. Then you're going to take the barrel, you're going to clean the barrel inside of that, and then you come back and you wipe it all off, and you're done. It's that easy. Remember, seal one and done.
All right, everybody's favorite segment, Stump My Nephew. My nephew Sam is particularly good when it comes to gun trivia. Now, the first time you hear the question is the first time Sam hears the question. We don't give him the question in advance. He doesn't get to look it up. He doesn't get any kind of help. He either knows it or he doesn't know it, or sometimes he talks his way into the answer, which is extremely entertaining. So this week we have a really interesting question for him. Sam, you there?
Yeah, how are you guys?
Good, man. How you doing?
Can't complain, Mike.
All right. Okay, good. Good. I'm glad. I was afraid you were going to complain, so I'm glad you can't. That's
Such a complainer, this guy.
All right, you ready for the question? Alicia's got you ready, Alicia?
I'm ready.
All right, Sam, you ready?
Here, let's have it.
All right, Dakota and I are just going to sit back and relax and watch the magic. Go.
All right, Sam, your question comes from Alicia from San Diego.
That sounds familiar.
All right.
Interesting.
All right. So the Webley revolver was the standard service pistol for which country's army from 1887 to 1963?
Okay, there's a short answer to the question, but I'm going to disagree with the premise of the question a little bit.
What?
Oh, wow.
Thank you for writing it. But there were several different patterns of Webley revolver. They were all similar, but they came in different calibers, and they changed the calibers over time. The early ones were in 455, and then they moved to 38-200, which is sort of similar to 38 Special. I don't know when that makeover happened, or which mark of Webley revolver they switched from 455 to 38. But the short answer is the United Kingdom. They used Webley revolvers in a decreasing capacity as time went on. They started procuring more Browning high powers for their military, but it was the United Kingdom that mainly used the Webley. I believe other Commonwealth countries used Webleys as well, but I don't go meet me.
You're correct.
Webley.
That's it. He's got it.
Webley.
Webley.
All right. Excellent
right.
job. So wait a minute. Why
I'm confused.
did you object to the premise? Run that by me again.
There wasn't one Webley revolver.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh,
There
All inclusive, all the variations.
I
yeah.
Gotcha. All
We-
right. Fine.
If we change like one word in the question, it's correct, right?
Yeah. Well,
if you changed it to a plural, I'll bet.
Yeah.
Webleys. What Webleys? Well, that'd be possessive. What Webley revolvers
Yes.
There you go.
There it is.
were used by? Okay. All right. There we go.
All right. Food for
Well,
thought.
awesome job. What do you know? Is there anything else you can tell us about a Webley?
I think it's a top grade. That's about it.
Top break.
Correct.
I don't know about foreign revolvers. I barely know about domestic ones.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys, he just gave you the cheat code. If you want to stump Sam, all you have to do is write questions about foreign
Foreign
revolvers.
Yeah. What the hell
well,
kind of
the-
foreigner out there?
Convert your motive with it, because I can't find any information on the Zastava M83, which is a Yugoslavian, later Serbian 357 revolver, and it's like there's this saying that if you want information, if you want a good answer to a question online, just post with a wrong answer, and a bunch of people will come in and correct you. So I'm saying right out, I don't know anything about foreign revolvers. So someone asked me a question about the M83 so I can get it wrong and learn from the answer.
Well, I think it's funny that some European revolver was 357, had an American caliber. Like,
Right.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
interesting.
stick to your millimeters, European. Okay, awesome job. Very good. You got it right. No one was able to, this Alicia character from San Diego was not able to stump my nephew.
Not today.
Not today. Not today, Alicia. All right, cool. Well, there you go. Thanks, man. Talk to you next.
Thanks for having me on, as always.
You bet.